I'm making this video to help Tekken players stop guessing. And there's two places where you can guess in Tekken. There's guessing on your offense, and there's guessing on your defense. So guessing on offense is something that happens all the time. Even when you're +6, your opponent can do things to make you trip up on your plus. So for example, Clive's parry, if I do something like +6 into down forward 1, I'm getting parried. But if I am an aware player, I understand the frames, I can think to myself, okay, this Clive usually parries when I'm plus. I can continue my offense using jabs, which will beat parries, or I can do a slower move that will beat parries by hitting them on the recovery frames. So instead of guessing, or instead of just giving up my turn to let them do whatever, I'm keeping up offensive pressure by taking stock of their defensive options and selecting for it with my next move. So I know I kind of jumped ahead, but all of this can be learned just by studying frames and studying what people like to do. There's also guessing on defense. And of course, like Tekken, at the end of the day, is just crouch block or stand block. But there's also diverse defensive options that you can do, from power crushes to evasive options to rage arts to sidestepping. Your goal as a defender is to make your attacker second guess. Your goal as the attacker is to select for your defender's defensive options. So it's a delicate game, and it's one that can be simplified down to just simple addition and subtraction through frame data. So introductions aside, I'm going to start with offense. I'm going to help you understand how fast certain disrespect options are available and how you can select against those and build a game plan around playing your plus frames extremely well. And I think the number one concept to playing a good offense in Tekken 8 is to always press on your plus frames. And I know that sounds shocking to a Tekken 7 or Tekken 1 boomer, I guess. But in Tekken 8, offense needs to be stacking. You need to always push on your plus. If I'm doing +6 and I'm waiting out this Clive's parry, unless there's a very good reason for me to do so, and there are reasons to do so, but in almost all cases, if I'm not pressing on my +6, I'm trolling. I'm There's not many chances where you can get plus frames off your opponent in a round. And if you're not maximizing that chance, you are never going to win situations like a better player will. So I guess rule number one for a Tekken 8 offense is to always press on your plus frames. It doesn't matter if you are +1, +0.5, +9, +15, it doesn't matter. In a first to two set, which Tekken 8 is based around, it is extremely important for you to press on your plus frames. So there's two reasons why you should always press on your plus. First of all, you don't get plus very often in this game. So if you're not using your advantages when you have them, you're going to lose more games just statistically. And pressing buttons, doing damage is how you use your frames. But also, and most players don't know this until the top level, but things track better when your opponent is minus. So, down forward 1, Clive throws his launcher, that's an easy step for me. If I'm +6, you can even look at my inputs, by the way. I'm sidewalking it, it tracks me. And this is actually just a common property among all Tekken characters, is any mid-range move will track almost 360 homing when you are -6 or -7. So if your opponent, essentially, if this happens to you where you give up your turn to move, or you give up your turn, yeah, essentially, if you give up your turn to move, which a lot of like mid-level Tekken players do, and you get launched by this down forward 2, it's over. Like, you have just squandered a insane lead into losing the game. It's completely trolling. So that's why I say you should always press on your plus. And I know there's going to be like Redditors in the comments that are like, oh, but what if this happens? Like, it doesn't matter. There are situations where I also wouldn't press on my plus, but it's not worth talking about in this video. In general, always take your advantage. I feel like that's not very controversial. So now that we've established rule number 1, which is always take your advantages, we get to the fun part, which is what I'm going to cover mainly in this video, which is how do I use my frame advantage? And every character has, I would say, more defensive options than you would think. And the fastest way that you can disrespect your opponent in Tekken 8 is a parry. Most parries are active on frame 3 to frame, are active from frame 3 or from frame 5, all the way to usually frame 9 to 13. I'm gonna write this down in the bubbles in the video so you don't get confused by all the numbers that I'm saying. But what that means is that parries are fast as hell. You could be +6, +9, and still get parried. So parries are extremely strong, but there are disadvantages to parries. First of all, most parries, not Clive's because he's privileged, but most parries are weak to elbows and knees, or armor moves, or rage arts, of course, even though you shouldn't be rage arting on your plus. But there are gaps to parries, even though they're super fast. Also, parries are baitable. Even though I said not to do that, that's a disadvantage that they have. But I would say most importantly, parries get beaten out by power moves. So if I'm doing power move into a power move, it's going to punish a parry. So instead of directly frame trapping somebody, like with down forward 1, which will get parried, I can do slow move into slow move, stack up that pressure, and that will actually be an insane option against parries, because now you're on an on-hit situation. So that's the first disrespect option I'm going to go over. Parries, active on frame 3 or frame 5 all the way to frame 9 or 13. There are things like power crushes, which I'm sure people in your ranked games spam. Power crushes in their name are very powerful, and they're almost universally active on frame 7. And when I say active on, that means that the armor starts on frame 7, not after. So something like +6 into a I7 or a 7 frame armor will get beaten by jabs, which are 10 frames, or a 12 frame mid, or of course something like a grab. But what Power Crush does that parry does not is that Power Crush beats a power move into a power move. So if your opponent really, really likes to Power Crush over parry, I would say it's pretty dangerous to do a power move into power move flowchart. Even though that will beat a parry, that will not beat a Power Crush. But things like returning back to basic poking could be good. I mean, this is a bad situation. Like, you're not seeing it because my HP is at 1, but I'm getting chipped like crazy here. But at least I'm not dying for it. And they're taking a little bit of damage. But I would say if your opponent likes to Power Crush a lot, there's no harm in just doing jabs to keep up your pressure. There's no harm in doing down forward 1s to keep up your pressure. And in this situation, it's also not harmful to start going for lows. Lows will beat parries. Lows will beat power crushes. And if you have the privilege of having a low that counter hits, that is an extremely, extremely strong option against power crushes. So something like that, where there's a counter hit property to the low, that will be parries and power crushes. So just going over both these important disrespect options, you can beat them with faster moves than their armor properties, or you can go low. Just a quick side note, I have a Discord and it's amazing. And it's amazing not because of me, but because of the people in it. There's lobbies, games every single day, people helping each other, doing free VOD reviews, asking questions, answering questions. Honestly, I wouldn't be making this video without them, without their encouragement. So shout out to them. The link is in the description. Please subscribe. And I have a Twitter. And just to show you like what's in my Discord, like people are just in here talking about Tekken, and all ranks are welcome, and we'd love to have you there. So now that I've kind of opened up the bag of worms about lows, obviously I need to talk about hopkicks. Clive's hop kick is kind of interesting in that it's slower. It's I-20. So actually, even though I'm counter hitting Clive here, most times against most characters' hop kicks, I will actually be the one getting getting counter hit there. So power move into power move is not very effective against hop kicks. Hop kicks are also not completely immune to lows. So if I'm +6 and I'm doing like this slow low here, which is I-19, obviously I'm getting crushed. But if I'm doing this fast low, this generic I-12 low, actually this hop kick is not working on me. And that's because hop kicks are active on frame 9. So if you know your character's fast lows or generic lows, and you know your opponent likes to hop kick, it's actually very possible to to beat an opponent's hop kick. And also, if I'm in a heat engager situation, which is +9, and I go low, if my low is fast enough, I can actually beat hop kicks. And people love hop kicking in a heat engager situation. And against certain characters, it actually isn't as good as it might seem. So I'm going to take a little break here. I've talked about these disrespect options that characters have, and how you can select against it. And the main way that you select against it is, of course, like using its properties against itself, like startup time, recovery time, punishability, etc. The possibilities to beat an opponent's defensive options and understanding the percentages that they're playing are endless. And you could have a coaching session with somebody for hours and hours and weeks and months and years to go over it. But hopefully this gives you some ideas. Like, this depth is insane. Even on this very simple +6 situation, which seems very good for you, now we realize it's not as good as you think. There's one more disrespect option that I want to talk about before I get to the premier disrespect option, which is sidestepping. And sidestepping just opens that complexity out of the window. But we'll start with something easy, which is rage arts. So rage arts are active on frame 8. So they are 1 frame slower than power crushes. The advantage, of course, is that if it hits you, you probably, like, if your rage art hits, you're probably winning. And it is super armor. It can't be beaten by grabs, lows, or anything. So beating a rage art from +6, oh, sorry, let me make him do a rage art. Beating rage art from +6 is pretty easy. Down forward 1 will beat it. But, and here's one situation that happens a lot. +5, oh, how do I make him block all the way? Okay, +5, a lot of people down forward 1 here, I'm dead. Because rage art is active on frame 8, and there's an 8 frame gap there. So this is one situation that, say I have a huge HP lead, of course, like, this guy's in rage, I'm full health, for example, maybe I go for my unsafe 12 frame mid here. So selecting for rage, I would say, is extremely, extremely important, and you need to understand, like, you need to know all your plus frames at least. You need to understand, like, how much can you get away with? And if you're caught in this trap where you're doing this heat engage and you're just pressing this quote-unquote safe down forward 1 and they're just a rage art spammer, you're dead. So understanding this rage situation is super important, and I've just shown you how to deal with it, which is, I would say, never give your opponent a turn when they're in rage, but just make sure that you're pressing buttons that select for their rage when you can. So outside of things like power crushes, rage arts, all of that, the biggest way that people are going to disrespect you, even just unintentionally, is through sidestepping. So after a jab, for example, I'll usually sidestep. After, I will sidestep up to +6 or +7 of the opponent's frame advantage. Like, I will sidestep all the time. Most good players will sidestep all the time. For certain characters, it's easier to deal with. For certain characters, it's harder to deal with. Obviously, certain characters can step better than others. But there are some universal rules about dealing with sidesteps that you might not have known about. So most times, when you are talking about beating sidesteps, everyone's answer is homing will beat sidesteps. But actually, it's not always going to happen. Most good players, their sidestep block is about 14 to 15 frames, So even though Kazuya's down forward 2 here is tracking me, since it's I-14 and I'm -1, the back 4, which is I-17, this homing kick, is never hitting me. So even though this fast mid sometimes hits me, this big high kick will never hit me. So I'm going to make him stop hitting me for a second. Why that's important is that most homing moves are actually I-17. There are exceptions, but almost every homing move is I-17. So, for example, if I'm just simply plus off of, let me make him block real quick. If I'm simply plus off of a jab like this, and I do Lily's homing move, I mean, there's many homing moves that Lily has. Also, it's bothering me, telling me to do a punishment option. But let's just say I do Lily's main mid homing, which is actually I-20. Very weak, by the way. I can't do this. This will not select for a sidestep. This will never beat a sidestep. So on like slight frame advantage like this, there is justification for not pressing, because instead of just pressing a button and hoping that they don't step, or instead of pressing a homing button to select for a sidestep, you could dash in and realign with their sidestep and keep up your pressure. That comes with its own issues, but that's one way to deal with sidesteps at +1. Also, homing grabs. They are I-12. And also, it's really hard to sidestep duck a homing grab, by the way. So, all this to say, sidesteps are extremely powerful, and homing moves are not always the solution. So, like, if this Kazuya is always stepping me after my jab, this is going to do nothing. The way to beat sidesteps on this, like, precarious +1, +2 situation is either using a homing grab, using a move that will track sidesteps. I think Lily's down forward 1, for example, has some slight tracking to her left. You can use moves that track to a direction that you know track to that direction. That's a very good option. Let me see if I can actually show that in an example. So yeah, if you are slightly plus, use a move that fits within this 14 frame window. And 14 frame window means like that's the window of a sidestep block. So use a move that fits within that 14 frame window to track the sidestep. Lily's down forward 1, like I said, tracks to her left. But of course there's risk to this, because what if this Kazuya sidesteps to the right? Now I'm dead. So all these things are considerations that you need to make. What you need to know from all this like ramble is that a sidestep block, which most players are going to do, most people don't sidewalk that much. A sidestep block takes 13 to 14 frames. If your opponent is sidestepping you in frame situations, you need to make sure that your response is within that 14 frame gap. One more thing, if someone is sidestepping you, you can also do like running moves to realign with them. So if they're giving up their turn, they don't have a turn here, but if they're giving up their response window to sidestep, you can do running moves to track them. Even a slash kick will track them. So that's another way to deal with sidestep. Sidestep is passivity. I think that's how you say it. That means that they're being passive. If they are being passive, instead of just using small pokes, why not go for a big cash out? Or go for a low, for example. So all of that I went over is on the offensive side. And now I'm sure you can kind of extrapolate from there. Like, how do I use like parries, power crushes, disrespect options, evasion on the defensive side to select for my opponent's offensive options? And what I'm going to go over in this section very quickly is how easily you can make someone just completely tripped up. And the goal is that once you have someone tripped up, they're not going to take their frames all the time. And what did I say at the start of the video? If you are not taking your frames all the time, you are trolling. So I'm playing my main character, sorry guys, Yoshimitsu, the king of disrespect, to show you guys how I dismantle most Bryans, for example, in ranked, or just sets. So most Bryans will do this flowchart as a representation of how they're going to play the game. So they do hatchet kick, and I usually default sidewalk left against Bryan when they're +5, because most times it will beat hatchet and I get a free launch. So say this Bryan recognizes that I'm doing this, and now they start moving into doing homings. Well, now Flash beats that homie, and Flash also beats Hatchet. So that's a very strong option there. And not every character has a Flash, but a lot of characters have defensive options that can select for both these situations. So this Brian, being smart, and he's watched the No Back guide, he says, oh, I'm +5. I'm going to jab. Because Flash takes 6 frames. See here, Flash takes 6 frames. So if I jab here, it will counter hit Flash. See, this Brian player is very, very smart. So now you can introduce layer 3, which is, as a Yoshimitsu main, a disgusting one. And you guys are not going to like this, but I know that Yoshimitsu's hot kick crushes jabs at frame 5. So this is a consistent interaction. And this is really what character mastery means. And I know I'm playing a disrespectful character, but every character has options to do disgusting things like these on their minus frames. You probably just don't know about them. And in places like the Waifu Wiki or Tekken Docs, you can see actually when moves will crush at certain frames. So you can turn really shit situations like +5 into situations where you have responses, where you can deal with things. So just like quick summary of this section is you need to master your character. You need to know what to do on +1, what to do on +2, what to do on +3, all the way to +9, +15, whatever. But you also need to know how to play your character at -1 all the way to -7. I think when you get to like -8, -9, it's time to guess. But also not really. Like, for example, heat engages are +9, but I'm sure you've rage arted out of a heat engage. I'm sure you've power crushed out of a heat engage. All of these things are things that you can do to make your opponent guess on their offense. So like now I've mind controlled this Brian. They are +5 and they have no idea what to do anymore. They are no longer taking their plus frames. They're waiting for me to flash and trying to jet upper me, which is, like I said before, trolling, because you should always take your frames. Who's more statistically likely to win now? Me, who's always taking my frames. I'm understanding my opponent's defensive options, so I understand how to take my frames every time, versus this Brian that sucks and doesn't know how to take their frames in an educated manner. Of course, I'm going to win. And that's the main idea of this video is if you understand how to play your frames while beating your opponent's frame situations, you're going to win. And by no means do you need to know every character's frame situations on every single move, but there are patterns and there are ways that you can kind of decode this. For example, power crushes universally active on the 7th frame. You can use this knowledge to guide your own gameplay. Rage arts always active on frame 8. Things like jabs always I10. Things like parries usually active on frame 3. This is why the frame data is super important, and we're also at a state where frame data has never been as available as it is now. Did you know that in Tekken 7 they didn't even have frame data until like season 3? Most people don't know that actually. So yeah. Understanding these numbers and slowly building your repertoire of frame data helps you become a more educated player. And when you become more educated, you win your plus situations more, and you also kill your opponent's minus situations more. So what am I trying to say? What is the conclusion of this video? Well, in the title, I say you should never guess again in Tekken. And of course, it's clickbait. Like, everyone's guessing. But playing your percentages is the difference between a good player and a great player. You could be a great Tekken player that understands like movement, like maybe you have like really good electrics, like good whiff punishment, good movement. But I notice that a lot of these players give up their turns because they don't understand the math behind their frame situations. Understanding how to get the most out of your plus frames and how to get the most out of your minus frames is the key to playing this kind of like, I hate the term, but small Tekken, or just like micro interaction Tekken. So for example, like this +5 situation seems simple. Like I just hit a mid, it's my turn. But if I'm this Lily, I could go, hey, this Reina likes to down forward 1 on her plus frames. Notice I'm +5 here. Notice that this down forward one is I-13, and notice how Rage Art armors on the 8th frame. So if this Lily is smart, they can Rage Art between this sequence that I'm doing and kill me for it. That's something that you would only be able to do if you are educated. And of course, there's so many skills that come into this game, but I would say frame knowledge and frame abuse is the easiest one that you can do because you don't even need to play the game to understand it. You can just read a spreadsheet or just go into the lab and understand someone's frame data and go from there. So all that said, I appreciate you for watching the video. Please join my Discord. I only upload a video like every 4 months, but there are people chatting in there literally every day, running sets. There's a lobby every single day. People are just there to improve. So I am honestly mainly making this video to grow my Discord community. I don't really make much money off these videos, but I owe it to the people around me to continue nurturing this community, and I hope that you become a part of it as well.